Have you ever wondered why, despite all your efforts, things don't turn out the way you expected? It seems like the more we try to plan, the more life surprises us with unexpected turns. But what if I told you there's a divine purpose behind it all? Many times, we think God is silent, when in reality, He's shaping something far greater than we can imagine. Now, it might seem contradictory to say that God has a perfect plan when everything around you feels like it's falling apart. But the truth is, what seems confusing today will make sense tomorrow. The key to unlocking this divine plan isn't about knowing every detail. It's about something much more challenging: patience and complete trust. God works in His own time. And when we understand that, anxiety is replaced with peace. So, if you truly want to understand God's plans for your life, stay with me until the end of this video. I'm going to show you how to see beyond difficulties and trust in His process. But first, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Here we talk about faith, spiritual growth, and biblical wisdom to help you walk closer to Christ. And now, I want you to comment below: I trust in God's plans. Let's go on this journey together. Sometimes life feels like a maze with no way out, doesn't it? We work hard, make plans, fight for what we want, and yet, things still don't go as expected. But is all of this just coincidence? God has a divine purpose for every person, even when the journey feels unclear. Jeremiah 29:11 makes it clear: God's plans are not for destruction, but for peace and hope. However, our impatience often blinds us from seeing His plan in the middle of our struggles. The big question is, do we truly trust Him, or only when things are going our way? Think of life as a giant puzzle. Every piece has its perfect place, but when we focus on just one small section, it often doesn't make sense. That's exactly how God's plans work. He sees the full picture, while we only see fragments. Imagine someone losing their job and feeling hopeless, thinking it was the end. But months later, an even better opportunity opens up, one they could only recognize in hindsight. The lesson: what seems like a problem today might actually be a crucial step toward a greater purpose. The truth is, no one likes to wait. We want quick answers, immediate solutions. But if we're honest, how many times have we tried to rush something only to see it fall apart? God operates on a different timeline than ours, and trusting in His purpose requires faith, patience, and full surrender. He's not ignoring our struggles. He's shaping us for something much bigger. And if we think about it, every true transformation takes time. Patience is one of life's biggest challenges. We want everything to happen instantly, but God works in perfect timing. Ecclesiastes 3:1 reminds us that there's a season for everything, but waiting is hard, isn't it? It's like planting a seed and expecting it to become a tree overnight. Yet while we wait, God is preparing us. What seems like a delay is actually a process of spiritual transformation. He strengthens us, teaches us, and shapes us for what's ahead. But are we truly willing to trust in His timing? If we look at the stories of great men and women of faith, we'll see that no one received a promise and lived it out immediately. Joseph was sold into slavery before becoming a ruler. Moses spent years in the desert before leading his people to freedom. David was anointed king but had to wait a long time before taking the throne. In every story, God worked on their patience and faith before fulfilling His plans. The same happens to us. That delay, that closed door, that silence from God, it could all be training for something much greater. So, what should we do while we wait? First, trust. God is never late. Second, learn. Use this time to grow, study His word, and seek a deeper relationship with Him. And finally, take action. Patience doesn't mean doing nothing. If you're waiting for God's answer, start preparing for it. If you want a new job, sharpen your skills. If you desire a blessed relationship, work on yourself. Waiting isn't a punishment. It's a training ground for growth. And in the end, when God's plan unfolds, everything will make perfect sense. Have you ever thought about how a sculptor works? He takes a raw block and begins carving, removing pieces until the masterpiece is revealed. This process isn't quick, and it often requires deep cuts. That's exactly how God works in our lives. Isaiah 64:8 reminds us that we are the clay, and He is the potter. But let's be honest, no one likes to be shaped. The challenges, trials, and difficulties we face are all tools in His hands, shaping us into the image of Christ. Yet in the middle of the process, we often complain, question, and even try to run away. The problem is that if we resist the process, we remain an unshaped block. Imagine a sculptor trying to carve a stone that refuses to be shaped. What happens? The work remains unfinished. Philippians 1:6 assures us that God will complete the good work He started in us, but only if we allow Him to do so. Sometimes He takes away something we thought was essential, but in reality, it was holding us back. Other times, He uses challenges to strengthen us. What seems like a painful strike today may actually be a precise adjustment to reveal something extraordinary. So how do we trust this process? First, by recognizing that God sees what we cannot. Second, by remembering that every stroke of His chisel has a purpose. And third, by surrendering completely. You can't be shaped halfway. If you know you're in the middle of this process, stop resisting and embrace the transformation. The sooner we surrender, the sooner God can refine us. And trust me, He is preparing you for something far greater than you can imagine. Few things are harder to accept than this truth. Trials don't come to destroy us, they come to strengthen us. James 1:2-4 tells us to rejoice when we face difficulties because they produce perseverance and make us complete. But how can anyone rejoice in the middle of pain? It seems impossible, doesn't it? However, think about the moments when you've grown the most in life. Were they during easy times or difficult ones? The reality is that challenges are what shape us. Faith doesn't grow in the comfort zone. It is strengthened in the midst of battles. Imagine a high-performance athlete. To reach excellence, they must train hard, endure fatigue, and push through muscle pain. But every drop of sweat has a purpose, to make them stronger. In the same way, God places us in situations that require faith, patience, and full surrender, not to punish us, but to prepare us. The problem is that we often want results without going through the process. We want unshakable faith without facing storms. We want strong character without going through trials. But that's not how it works. Real growth comes from effort and trust in God, even when everything seems difficult. So what should we do when trials come? First, stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is God teaching me through this?" Second, don't run from the process. If God allowed this challenge, it's because He has a divine purpose in it. And third, keep the faith. As Romans 5:3-4 teaches, trials produce perseverance, character, and hope. In the end, every difficulty carries a valuable lesson. The real question is, are we willing to learn? Truly trusting God is harder than it seems. We say we trust Him, but in reality, we want to control everything. Proverbs 3:5-6 makes it clear. We shouldn't rely on our own understanding, but should surrender our ways to Him. The problem: people love predictability. We want to know exactly what's going to happen. But God operates differently. Many times, He asks us to take steps of faith without showing us the next step. And that's where the real challenge begins. Will we surrender completely, or will we keep trying to handle everything on our own? Think about Peter walking on water. As long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, he remained steady. But the moment he focused on the wind and waves, he started sinking. That's how we are. We trust when everything is going well, but as soon as a difficulty arises, we begin to doubt. God isn't calling us to shallow faith that depends on what we see. He calls us to deep trust, where we don't have to understand everything, just believe that He knows what He's doing. And let's be honest, how many times have we tried to control everything only to end up frustrated? Maybe it's time to let go and trust more, but how do we develop this absolute trust? First, by stopping our fight against the uncontrollable. Some things are simply beyond our hands. Second, by remembering all the times God has sustained us in the past. And third, by making decisions based on faith, not fear. Isaiah 41:10 assures us that He strengthens and upholds us. So why do we insist on carrying burdens that aren't ours to bear? In the end, the real question isn't whether God is trustworthy. The real question is, are we truly willing to trust Him? The ultimate goal of all this is simple yet powerful, to be shaped into the image of Christ. This process isn't just about overcoming challenges or getting through hardships. It's about becoming transformed, reflecting the character of Jesus. Romans 8:29 reminds us that we were predestined to be conformed to the image of God's Son. But let's be honest, this doesn't happen overnight. It takes faith, patience, and complete surrender. God doesn't just want to bless us, He wants to transform us. And that transformation requires sacrifice, humility, and a willingness to let go of anything that doesn't align with His divine purpose. Look at the journey of the disciples. None of them were ready from the start. Peter was impulsive, Thomas doubted, Paul persecuted Christians. But over time, God refined each of them, shaping them into true instruments of His kingdom. The same is true for us. The process may be painful, and we might lose things we once thought were essential. But in the end, everything God removes is to make us more like Christ. What seems like loss is actually gain. What feels like suffering is actually growth. And the big question is, are we willing to go through this process, or do we just want the blessings without the transformation? If the goal is to become more like Jesus, then our daily choices need to reflect that. Small habits make all the difference. How do we react to problems? How do we treat people? What do we do when no one is watching? Our spiritual transformation happens in the small, everyday decisions. The question isn't whether God is working in us. He is. The question is, are we allowing Him to shape us, or are we resisting? Now that you understand God's plans, the question is, will you trust the process, or will you keep trying to control everything on your own? God has already laid out the perfect path for you, but He won't walk it for you. Trials aren't punishments, they're tools for growth. Patience isn't wasted time, it's a gift that strengthens your faith. So here's the real question. Will you truly let God shape your life, or will you resist the process? If this message spoke to your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Apply it. Starting today, give your worries to God, practice patience, and remember that every challenge is an opportunity to grow closer to Him. And now I want to hear from you. What part of this message spoke to you the most? Comment below. Your experience might inspire someone else. And of course, if you want to keep growing in your faith, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There's so much more content to help you live according to God's plans. And to start, check out this other video on the screen. I'm sure it will change the way you see faith.